He was the Continental Congress's chief proponent on independence. A statesman, diplomat, attorney, and writer from Boston, he improbably defended in court the British troops who participated in the Boston Massacre. After working with Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin to nudge Congress to declare independence, he served the new nation as a diplomat in England, France, and the Netherlands. Elected the nation's first vice president, he became the leader of the Federalist Party, advocating for a strong central government. Succeeding George Washington as president, his single term in office saw the rise of rival political parties. Defeated by Thomas Jefferson in his bid for re-election, he retired to Massachusetts. Years later, he revived his friendship with Jefferson through a fascinating exchange of letters. He died on the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, the same day as Jefferson. He is our nation's second chief executive, John Adams. We are looking at a map of lower New England. John Adams was born in what was then part of Braintree, Massachusetts. It is now Quincy. You can see it here. And in Quincy, you can find his birthplace as well as his estate Peacefield, which is today part of the Adams National Historic Site. Both of those locations are part of that site, which is run by the National Park Service. You can see the proximity to Boston. It was in Boston where Adams famously defended in court the British troops that were involved in the Boston Massacre in 1770. Another place very important in the life of John Adams is the city of Philadelphia. It was here, of course, that Adams was a delegate to the Continental Congress and a strong advocate for independence in the period leading up to July of 1776. It was also Philadelphia that was the capital of the United States from 1790 to 1800 before it moved to the District of Columbia. And it was there that Adams served as vice president and served most of his term as president. And he is buried in the First Parish Church in Quincy, Massachusetts. Now let's take a look at some photos from these sites. Let's take a look at some of the books in my library associated with John Adams. We begin with the foremost modern biography of Adams by David McCullough. If you're familiar with McCullough's works, he wrote a famous biography of Harry Truman and a number of other very good books on American history topics. This book is simply called John Adams. It's also the basis for an HBO miniseries, which is very good. So I highly recommend this biography of Adams. I also have a book by Peter Shaw, published originally in 1976. It's called The Character of John Adams. It goes through different periods in Adams's life and looks at his extensive writings to write about his values and character based on those writings. I have another book about the election of 1800, which I will mention in the next episode. One other book that I wanted to highlight, though, is a biography of another important figure of this era. It's without precedent, Chief Justice John Marshall and His Times by Joel Richard Paul, and it was published in 2018. Marshall was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Adams and served as Chief Justice for many years, handing down many important decisions, including Marbury versus Madison. Well, that's all for this episode. Our next episode will focus on our nation's third chief executive, Thomas Jefferson.